Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we are looking at the world of nuclear decommissioning. Now, nuclear power has played a vital role in the UK's energy story for more than half a century. But as the country transitions towards a low-carbon future, there's another story unfolding, one of responsibility, innovation and transformation. It's the story of decommissioning. And at the heart of this story is the UK Nuclear Decommissioning Authority, tasked with one of the largest, most complex environmental remediation missions in Europe and responsible for safely, securely and efficiently decommissioning the UK's civil nuclear legacy. This means dealing with decades-old infrastructure, hazardous materials and a technical challenge that spans generations. But it's not just about dismantling what's old, it's about building the systems, the skills, the strategies needed to do it better, faster and more sustainably. Today the NDA is in the midst of a major transformation programme, from digital innovation and smart asset management to a cultural shift that embraces agility, collaboration and change. The NDA is rethinking what it actually means to manage nuclear legacy sites in the 21st century. So to find out how this strategy is being turned into reality, I am joined on the podcast today by Stuart Miller, Programme Director at NDA, who will help us to explore the opportunities and obstacles on the road ahead. In short, it's an opportunity, I hope, to shed light on one of the most important yet often overlooked national missions of our time. Stuart, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Anthony, thank you very much. It's great to be here, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about what we do at the NDA.
Well, let's make a start. I mean, I painted a picture of complexity and challenge, but Stuart, what would I know? How would you describe an NDA's mission today? I mean, and how has it evolved over the past decade?
Yeah, I mean, complexity, challenge, two very good words. I think for me, there's other words that come to mind. Ingenuity, ambition, and opportunity, actually, is probably another one. I think, for those who aren't familiar with the nuclear mission, our journey really started back in the 1940s, post-war, the work that was done around the atom then. And actually, we're still looking after a number of facilities from that time. And that's one of the big challenges for us, that there are things that were created and done then that we need to deal with. There wasn't plans put together when they were created. And so where we are today, we still have those legacy issues to deal with. We still have other work that we do to support UK PLC. Yeah. But also, I think in the last 10 years, we've taken some really big steps forward. We've started to make progress on a lot of those fronts, and actually, we've brought together a lot of the capabilities from the UK to do that with us.
Obviously, you're spread over many sites across the UK. Can you just briefly describe where you're actually based?
Yeah, so NDA, we're across the country, actually. We have nuclear sites from Dounreay in the very north, right down to coastal sites in Somerset and further south in Kent. I guess the one that people will have heard of would have been Sellafield, one of the first sites where we did a lot of our work. And I guess Sellafield and Dounreay are probably our more complex sites, whereas some of the others are old Magnox sites. So they're old reactor sites. They were built as twin sister pair sites, so we have a number of those around the estate. What we actually do is we operate those across some operating companies to make sure we keep focus on the things that are most important. So we have an operating company at Sellafield, we have an operating company for the Magnox sites, and we make sure that actually when we are thinking about our work and the work that we do, that we can prioritise our work across our entire fleet, across our challenges, and make sure that is taken in a holistic way, so that each of those sites gets the support and help that it needs to move the mission forward. Yeah,
well, certainly it's a mission grounded in safety and accountability, but also increasingly nowadays being shaped by data, technology, and the need for really strong partnerships. So what really makes nuclear decommissioning in the UK uniquely challenging, compared to, I suppose, other parts of the world or perhaps other sectors of the infrastructure world?
That is the killer question, actually, Anthony. And I think what we have in the UK, we have some of the most hazardous facilities in Europe to deal with. We have some of the biggest legacies from a nuclear past generation and other things.
That's simply because we it all started here, presumably, and you're dealing with stuff which is right in the early days.
Absolutely. We were one of the first nations to develop that, one of the first nations to have commercial reactors, one of the first nations to develop deterrents. And that comes, one of the first nations to do lots of tests around nuclear to find out what we really knew. And we are leaders in that in many fields. But what makes it uniquely challenging really is you've got organizations that have grown up as nuclear operations, that they are very, very safe. They are very secure. They build a mindset and a culture that's around that. So, the people that I work with day to day, that's built in from day one.
Yeah.
And as our mission is changing, as we have to get more into our decommissioning part of that and moving away from operations, actually, you need to bring people along with you to do that. And what I say to people when I'm working through my transformation is, we can't expect people who've been told that change is bad in operations to suddenly embrace it. And so, we have real technical challenges. We have real skills challenges. We have real data challenges that we have to face. But actually what we do have behind that is a really skilled workforce and a supply chain.
Yeah. Well, decommissioning certainly is planned over decades and centuries even. I mean, I said you've been doing it half a century, but it's more than that now. So, and you're looking ahead for what you need to do over the next decades and centuries. So what does success look like for the NDA's transformation program over the next 5 to 10 years? Is it possible to measure over such short timescales when you've got such a long timescale ahead of you?
Yeah, so it's a really good question that the mission will outlive my career, and if my children were to go into it, probably their careers as well. So we have to break that down. We have to look at what's important today and prioritize the things that we're going to look at. And in terms of what we're trying to change in the next 5 to 10 years, really what we need to build on is the innovation that's coming along. I've been working recently on AI hackathons for the first time, which is very interesting. Right. But actually the answers aren't all technical. They're not all digital. Some of the solutions that we need to build will be, fairly industrial or agricultural almost in the way that we go about doing things. And what we're trying to do in the transformation at the moment is find much more cost-effective ways of delivering the decommissioning part of our mission, of doing that in a value for money way, and actually bringing in ideas and technologies from other sectors, because other people have actually come up with much quicker ways of doing the kinds of things we want to do.
Yeah, because while we think of the industry as being, and it is very, very technical, very, very complex. There's also a lot of the work you do there, which is what you might call conventional infrastructure. It's building new buildings, it's building new access roads, it's building new infrastructure, power supplies, etc., to make all that happen.
Absolutely, we spend a lot of money on infrastructure, keeping our sites safe and secure, making sure we've got accesses. We do have a number of new builds. We have to work our way through the decommissioning part, but we will need new capabilities to do that. So we have some very large major projects running. We have people, from other sectors that come and help us do that as well. And I think the opportunity here is to find the balance between, nuclear safety, what we need to achieve, and actually making progress in a proportionate and sensible way on the things that we can, as you say, under conventional approaches, really. Yeah,
because presumably, like every other project, you have budgets, you have schedules, you have targets to hit.
Absolutely.
But you talk about transformation. I mean, let's get a bit more detail about how NDA is transforming. I mean, what role is digital transformation we mentioned earlier? What role do you see that playing in reshaping how you now approach decommissioning today?
Yeah, I think digital transformation is a key one. I think we're starting from a relatively low base in our sector, and there's good reasons for some of that. Introducing digital takes time; it has to be secure. We don't want systems that become obsolete, so we have to make sure that those are done in the right way. But actually, for things like our new build, for things that sit in our decommissioning space, adoption of new tools, BIM, 3D modeling, 4D modeling in GIS, VR tools. We've got some great examples where we're using VR to look for clashes in designs as we're building things up.
Well, give us some examples of how data analytics perhaps and digital modeling has led to, better and, in your world, safer outcomes, I suppose.
Yeah, so actually there's a really good one that's close to me in the transformation I'm doing around decommissioning. So we've built a data analytics platform that brings together for the first time all of the plans for decommissioning across our group. And it allows us to start to interrogate that. And it allows us to look for synergies in the way we do things. So the NDA recently, in the last 5 years or so, 6 years, has been building out its group model. It's been allowing us to work together across the sector. Right. And when you start to look and use the digital analytics tools, you can start to see similarities between facilities, between challenges. And what that will offer us is the opportunity to say, hey, actually, let's find a way of moving teams around. Let's find a way of using the same solutions. And in doing so, what you actually start to build in is safety and is value for money. Because if you can keep repeating standardized solutions and simplifying them, actually, you're going to get the benefit of that.
But I imagine that's hard because you need to balance innovation with the risk-averse environment and very traditional, and we do it this way environment of nuclear safety and regulation. Is that a challenge?
To some degree, yes. I mean, the NDA, I think this number's right. We spend about £100 million a year on research and development and bringing innovation forward. And some of that benefits us directly, and some of that then gets taken out into the marketplace and benefits others. So we do have a very strong focus on innovation, on R&D, on making sure this is working for people. But there is a balance, as you say, and sometimes the right answer isn't to take something innovative. Sometimes we've had examples where the right answer was to use a metal pole rather than a robotic arm. You know, we found ways of doing things that are actually cheaper and safer, that are innovative in a different way. So I think most people will jump to innovation must be robots and AI. Actually, innovation is anything someone can come up with that's going to make life easier. And I think we've got a great track record of that. The one thing I will say is I work with some fantastically clever people who are really curious, and that's the foundation of innovation, really. So for us, it makes it a little easier to start to build those things out.
Well, you mentioned that, spending £100 million a year on research and development. I mean, what kind of budgets are we talking about at NDA? I mean, the scale of it is over centuries, but on an annual basis, what is the kind of figure that we're looking at here?
I think for last year, I think we were around £4 billion. It was kind of that scale, and that's been continuing for a number of years and is likely to continue for a period into the future. So this isn't a small endeavour, it's a significant investment by the taxpayer.
But the reason I say that is because when you're focusing on transforming asset management with that level of investment behind you, what does that actually look like in practice? How are you measuring whether or not that transformation is working?
You're pressing on my favourite topic, Anthony, which is benefits. So for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a benefits bull. This is the most fundamental part of the way we make investments at the NDA and across the UK, actually. So the way that we look at R&D, the way we look at innovation, and the way we look at our investment in any part of the mission that we're delivering is actually how does that drive the mission forward? How does it deliver benefits? Now, some of those will be cost benefits, of course, and other parts of that will be safety. And some of them are really around confidence. So, we have strong connections to our community. We need to make sure that they understand the things we're going to do and why we're going to do them. So really, this is all benefits led. It has to be. And ultimately, anything that's not doing that, actually, they're right for having a look at.
Yeah, interesting. You use that, the phrase of the community that you're working in, because that is one really strong thing I know around the nuclear decommissioning or the whole nuclear industry, that it is built up in communities because people that live near those areas typically work in that industry. Is that for you a major driver then, making sure that community is being properly served?
It's very important to us, yes. When I talk to people, I say the culture of the site doesn't end at the gate. It actually seeps its way into our communities and vice versa. So we have people in our communities, as you say, who work in the sector. We have people in the communities who are concerned about the things we do in our sector. And actually, those voices are really important to hear because they will help us shape the nature of our mission, the way we do that mission. You can think from an infrastructure perspective, if we're doing a new build and the number of vehicles moving around local networks, for example, we need to think about better ways of doing that. We need to hear from the community what that kind of impact would be. So I think having that connection with the community, having the relationship with the community gives us a bit more ability to deliver our mission in a way that meets both UK priorities, but also local priorities.
Yeah, and make sure that skill set is actually being reinforced generation after generation in that area.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've been I'm talking a bit about you, Stuart. I mean, you've been at the NDA for over 13 years. What drew you into the nuclear industry?
It's a good question. What drew me in? It's a bit of a circular journey. I'm a civil and environmental engineer, and I was drawn into that. I did that at university. I was drawn into that by some work I did at A-level, strangely enough, on previous versions of how do we deal with nuclear waste back in the 90s. And I was really interested in how the work we do impacts on the environment, all parts of the environment, and vice versa. And I think the nuclear sector drew me in because I can see that the mission that we have is an environmental remediation mission, and that becomes really important to me, actually.
Yeah, because to many, I mean, nuclear sector has not been a particularly attractive part of the industry. It's been seen as being in decline, perhaps in the UK, for some time. What keeps you and what keeps the industry really excited about this sector right now, then? Apart from the fact you're spending shed loads of money.
Absolutely. And we that there's a key focus in there. But I'll come back to the money at the end. I think that view is probably true maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. I think in the last 7 or 8 years, things have significantly changed. I think there's a nuclear renaissance at the moment. We've got nuclear new builds running. We've got AMRs, SMRs, work that's going on to look at how do we power the nation in the future. And actually, inside the decommissioning sector, we've made some very, very significant progress, particularly on our high hazard legacy facilities. We're in retrievals on each of our ponds and silos now. When I started, that did not seem like a possibility in some regards because it was so complex. The teams have done brilliantly there. And I think that's starting to energize the decommissioning sector as well. We can get things done. But I think that point around the money, that comes to what's really exciting about the sector is the importance of the mission. The money is needed to deliver that, but really, you could speak to anybody in the nuclear sector and decommissioning sector, and I suspect they would give you the same answer, which is what really drives you? Well, it's the mission. Yeah. It's supporting something that's so important.
Yeah. Well, you started your career at Capita Simons. What were you doing before you
so I use this as an excuse in meetings. I'm non-nuclear, I keep saying, because my trade was around infrastructure. So I worked on, my very first job was GCHQ, actually. So some really big projects. I've done a lot of work in highways, remediation. I'm also a chartered environmentalist, so I've done quite a bit of work on environmental impact assessment. So I feel that I've got a really nice balance between my engineering side, my environmental side, my project management side. And then all of that was applied across central, local government, private developers. And I think what that gave me was a really good grounding in people, whether it's clients, whether it's communities, whether it's the teams I worked with. It was really interesting to see how all of that dynamic worked. I think that's what's drawn me towards transformation, actually.
Yeah. Well, you studied civil and environmental engineering at Sheffield University. And I suppose, given what you're up to now, would you say that nuclear is good for the environment?
Short answer, yes. I think there's a debate around all of the activities we do as humans, isn't there? We have impacts in everything we do. I think from an energy perspective, I don't think there's another way we can meet the base load that we're going to require in the future other than nuclear power. And I've given that a lot of thought. My environmental hat on, there are questions still to be answered around nuclear. But I think if we're going to make that change, if we're going to have a society that can continue to have its needs met, we're going to need to put things in the mix that give us flexibility, agility, low carbon. And I think nuclear has to be part of that.
Exactly, which doesn't, of course, burn fossil fuels, which is a key thing. You live up in Carlisle, is it?
Yeah.
What do you get up to when you're not thinking about nuclear waste then?
Well, I think about it all the time, Anthony. No.
Well, you've got guitars hanging on the wall, presumably. You're into music.
So we won't do a musical interlude. But yes, I do enjoy playing guitar. I've just bought a piano. In fact, me and my wife bought the piano after we'd been to the pub, and my friend helped us get it home. So I am learning that as well.
Grand piano, upright piano?
Sadly, just a little upright piano, but it's really good fun, actually. Just having a break from work. I think I'm really lucky. I live in Cumbria. I live on the edge of the Lake District. I live next to southwest Scotland. I can go out cycling. I can go and enjoy the countryside with my family. I've got 2 kids who are just starting their journey through GCSEs, so I've got lots of other things to do. I think just finding things. One of the SROs I spoke to previously, I asked how do they deal with the pressure that comes with delivering major transformational change for government, and they said that their answer was, I've got a group of friends who don't know anything about what I do, so when I need to, I can just go and spend time with them. And I've got the same thing. Actually, I find it really helpful that I have areas in my life that I can just switch off from what I'm doing and then come back into it and be absolutely focused.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I suppose nuclear waste is something a lot of people don't really want to spend time thinking about. I mean, cultural change is often the hardest part of transformation, or any transformation. How do you deliver or develop that mindset of innovation and adaptability, which is kind of fundamental to any transformation?
Yeah, I think in terms of building cultural change this is the piece that fascinates me. And actually, my experience over the last 10 years has taught me that one of the most important parts is about behaviours. So you can't really affect cultural change directly. What you can do is you can start to demonstrate the behaviours that are needed. So whether that is making safe spaces for people to try innovative things, whether it's about having leadership that is, you're serving others, whether that's about making sure that, I talk about benefits all the time, making sure people know they're connected to a mission. That's all very important. And I think leaders play the most important part in that, because as soon as I stop that for one day, cultural change starts to unravel straight away. So I think in terms of, how do you bring that on board for innovation and adaptability? Well, what you've got to do is give them a space to do that. You've got to help encourage them. We're really lucky, as I pointed out, we've got people that are so curious. Yeah. Actually, what all you're doing is creating the space for them to do it.
It is an interesting sector in that, in many ways, you have got such a forward workload that you can now plan for future generations of nuclear professionals. You kind of know what they're going to be doing over the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years. How do you make sure that they've got the right digital and leadership skills?
Yeah, so I think the NDA invests something like £45 million a year in early careers for graduates apprenticeships. We've got some brilliant graduate schemes, actually. I think the one at Sellafield is award-winning for project management. So we do invest in making sure we have that pipeline. But actually, we invest in people mid-career. So we encourage people from across sectors to do things like that. We actually fund something, I think it's called Destination Nuclear, that tries to encourage people to think about their skills and how they'll bring those in. And I think, in terms of digital and leadership, I think digital, for future generations, that's going to be built in. I can watch my kids with digital. Yeah. For my generation, our generation, actually encouraging people to stay active with that is the most important part of it. And I pointed out, I've been on a hackathon recently. Yeah. My mind was blown about how we will connect to digital solutions in the future. For leadership, I've seen how seriously we take leadership in the nuclear sector, but I think it is one of the most important parts. I always say to my graduates and to my team, you will know a good leader when you see them because of the way they behave. And I think we need to do more to promote the behaviours, promote good leaders, not just in our sector, but actually across the patch.
You've said that perhaps you think that the impression of the industry maybe has been changing over the last few years. Are you seeing an increasing interest in careers in decommissioning, or is it still a challenge to attract the right talent?
I think for the decommissioning part of our mission, it can sometimes be a challenge. We've got nuclear operations. We look after nuclear fuels and nuclear materials. We've got these big projects that are running. Decommissioning's at the back end, and sometimes can be seen as a nice to have it occasion. But actually, the opportunities in there for being innovative, for driving, are really, really good. And what we're seeing actually is, as we're making the change to the way we do decommissioning, it is encouraging people from other sectors to say, actually, like me, you don't have to be a nuclear person to work on a nuclear site. Yeah. There are some controls around that, but actually I can bring my skills into that. And I think we're seeing actually more people turn towards the nuclear sector as a great future career.
Yeah, because I was wondering whether there was an issue around maintaining staff morale and motivation in a sector which is perhaps associated with taking stuff apart, dealing with stuff which is finished, rather than actually building new stuff for the future.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of strands to that. It's really interesting. You've got teams of people who've operated some of these facilities for 20, 30, 40, their whole careers. Yeah. And what's interesting when I go and speak to them is they want to feel part of finishing that mission. So actually motivating the teams that are already there and who have cared and tended for these facilities. It isn't actually that difficult. What is difficult is helping them understand there's a difference between an operational mindset and a decommissioning mindset, and they need to understand you don't have to take bolts out individually. Things can be taken apart because they're not going back together. That is quite a difficult shift for people, and we shouldn't underestimate it. I think for those who look at the sector and as how do we motivate people? I come back to, I think our staff survey tells us this actually. The vast majority of people in the NDA are very, very connected to the mission. And if you're like us and other professionals, you want to feel part of something that's really valuable. And actually that's one of the key things that drives and motivates people across this sector.
So would you say that it is that connection with the mission that really embracing what you were doing and why you're doing it, it really is the key leadership quality when it comes to navigating this complex and highly scrutinized industry?
Very highly scrutinized, rightly so. I think in terms of that leadership quality, I think the most important part of that motivation is making that connection visible for people. So you can call it benefits if you want, but really what we're talking about is for individuals working in a team on a site on a rainy Tuesday in November, how do you make sure they can see how they are connected to something? And you can't just tell the story of we're going to finish the mission in 100 years or we've got this in your target. Actually, the story is a journey, and that story has to be told in a way that people can say, oh, I'd like to be part of that, and I can see how I add value to it.
Yeah. Why does it matter what I'm doing now? But not only that, why does it matter that I do it well and do it properly and do it accurately and do it safely?
Absolutely. And I think I'd connect that back to the communities. There are lots of people who want to move this forward because they don't want to leave that legacy for their communities, for their children, for their future generations. They want to make that progress now. So, that cycle really sometimes can help reinforce what we're trying to achieve. Yeah.
Well, building on that community idea, just to bring us to a close, is you're not doing this on your own. The NDA works hugely in partnership with industry, with academia, and with government. How critical would you say those partnerships are in driving your transformation? I
think they're vital. I think if you think of those people who help us come up with ideas, academia, R&D, the supply chain innovation, they're the ones who are really helping us drive in more efficient ways of doing things, state of the art, ideas from elsewhere. That really sets us up. I think you've got other stakeholders like government, like our communities, who we have to be very responsive to, and they support us by ensuring that their demands are clear, by making sure that they understand what we're up to, by not using this with capitalized, but by being intelligent clients for us, making sure they understand what's going on and helping to drive us. And I think when you look at people like the regulators, for example, the regulators are there to make sure we do everything in compliance with the regulations, but actually they do much more. They help us challenge ourselves on what the art of the possible would be. So I think if you think about our partners, and those partnerships will need to continue for 100 years, that we will need new supply chain partners, we will need new teams in academia and other areas. As those things continue, we are absolutely reliant on them, and that needs to be synergistic. That there needs to be an offer that comes back from both sides. And I think what we've done probably in the last 7 or 8 years is really start to drive that. We've seen the supply chain stepping in. We've set up partnerships, for example, at Sellafield for 20 years, looking at major projects and driving through improvements from great practice that already exists, across other sectors.
Well, clearly in an environment now where the government's looking for growth, the government is looking for energy security, is there more that the UK government or regulators could do to support innovation and progress in decommissioning?
I think they already do quite a lot. I think challenging the paradigm for decommissioning, so regulators and government understanding that and challenging us to make sure that we are providing a value for money service, not just applying what we've done for 50 years, but actually looking at that and saying that there are better ways of doing this. And there's some great teams doing this around our estate. One of them is in Sellafield at the moment. It's called the RAD team. And that RAD team is basically taking out all of the constraints and then building them back in with the support of the regulator to say, what do we really need to support us in decommissioning? If we've got a facility that has no radiological hazard to it anymore, actually, how do we get a demolition company to come in, take that on and help us deliver that straight away in the way they know best? And the regulators and government are helping to support that.
Given the scale of the operations you've got going on there, plus the longevity of them, is there an opportunity for NDA to export UK expertise in decommissioning or offering it as a global service?
I think through our partnerships with the supply chain, certainly, we do have a transport business that already offers services internationally. So, I would say this, wouldn't I, from the NDA, but, we are the nuclear transport provider of choice, really, across the world. And I think there are other opportunities. This
is transporting hazardous waste, hazardous materials by train, by sea, by road, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So reprocessed material or other materials. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, other materials that they could be as simple as, not simple, but they could be materials like medical material. There's the things that we're involved in across the nuclear sector is quite wide. And I think if you look at things like Fukushima, the support that we've provided from the UK to help them come up with ideas and ways to solve those problems, actually, with nuclear power stations coming off the bars across the world, there aren't actually enough people in the world who know how to do all of these things. So I think the UK is actually positioned really well. We've got fantastic skills. We've got some brilliant companies. We've got some world-leading expertise. And I think the UK could make use of that, could find ways to sell that. And that would help us as well, because in doing that work, we will find new things, new ways of doing things that we can build back in.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fact that you're being very open about what you're up to there and how you're approaching it, it really kind of underlines that need to be transparent and to build public trust around what you're doing there. And is that something which you're conscious as an organisation to be, that you've got to go out and do that a lot more?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think we're actually quite transparent. I think a point you made before, not everybody thinks about the nuclear decommissioning sector every day. We do connect. I was lucky enough to attend a stakeholder summit earlier this year to present to people from around the UK, people from communities, from pressure groups, all sorts of people. And actually, the opportunity there was great, because I got to speak to people and really understand some of their issues, some of the challenges, some of their ideas that they'd had. So I think actually the openness with which the sector operates, we don't have to share nuclear secrets. What we have to share is how do our plans look? How are we going to do this? How will we impact on communities? How will we use that to leverage, more value for UK PLC? I think sharing all of that is vital, and I think it's something we actually do pretty well. Yeah.
Now, well, finally, Stuart, I mean, what gives you optimism? I mean, you're a very optimistic guy. You're a very passionate guy about the work you're doing there. But what gives you optimism about the future of nuclear decommissioning in the UK? Yeah,
I think. Look, I work with some amazing people that challenge me and help me every day. And I think that's one of the things that really gives me optimism for the future. I see partners who are coming on board, who are committed to the nuclear sector, who are building their skills and building innovation out from that. And I see other sectors connecting with our sector to learn and share. And I think all of that comes together in us as people. So, for me, if I'm optimistic about anything, I'm optimistic about the way we are helping to shape our people for the future.
Yeah, and with a programme stretching over such a long period, I mean, how do you stay focused?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go back to my original point. This is about benefits. It's easy for me to be focused because I understand the journey and how this will affect and help, people in our communities, our near our sites, but actually across the UK. And I think, when I think about transformational change, the difference between that and other changes, transitional changes, I call them, is we know where we want to get to, and that has to be really clear. We don't always know how we will get there, all of the steps we will take. Some of them will be the wrong steps. Some of them will take us backwards. But actually having that vision, having that direction right from the very top of where we want to get to, that's really good, because that helps me stay focused. Whatever happens in a day-to-day process, whatever happens to my team, whatever blockers come up, whatever changes happen, actually we have a true north that we can follow. Makes it relatively straightforward to stay optimistic.
Well, Stuart, thanks so much for spending time with me today to explain what's going on. It's a fascinating topic, and I always remember when I used to chair decommissioning conferences when I was at New Civil Engineer, I used to come out and think, I really hope they know what they're doing, because it is incredibly complicated, it is incredibly technical, but it is also a really, really important sector. So look, thanks for explaining and setting out the challenges for us today on the podcast.
Anthony, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stuart. But sadly, that is all we've got time for on the podcast now. But there is more in the pipeline as we continue to probe the big issues facing the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you will find background information and all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share. So thanks for joining us. Thanks again to Stuart, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.